All right, so get this. Imagine stumbling upon a cave in the middle of the desert, and like this strange feeling washes over you so strong you feel compelled to turn back. And then imagine that's the last anyone ever hears from you. That's the unsettling mystery surrounding Kenny Veach's disappearance. Today we're diving deep into this case with a stack of articles, forum discussions, and even some accounts from Kenny's family.
What's fascinating about this case is that it's not just a disappearance, it's a story that spirals outward, touching on the allure of the unknown, the risks of solo exploration, and the sometimes unpredictable nature of online communities.
Absolutely. Kenny Veach was more than just a hiker. He was a YouTuber known as Snakebit Mickey, an inventor and a true desert enthusiast.
Yeah.
This wasn't some random guy who got lost. He knew the Mojave and Great Basin deserts like the back of his hand.
And that's what makes his disappearance even more perplexing. He often went on solo hikes for days with minimal supplies and no GPS, which in those environments is walking a tightrope.
Totally. But there's one specific event that really sets this case apart, and it starts with a comment on one of Kenny's YouTube videos. No, do not go back there. If you find that cave entrance, don't go in, you won't get out. Chillin', right? This comment was about a place Kenny called the M Cave, near Nellis Air Force Base.
That comment, posted in 2014, becomes the lens through which we have to view everything that happened afterward. It raises so many questions. Was it a genuine warning? A prank? Or something more sinister?
Okay, so rewind a bit. What exactly is the M Cave, and why was Kenny so drawn to it?
Well, according to Kenny, he found this cave with an entrance shaped like a giant M. As he approached, he claimed to feel these intense vibrations, almost like an unseen force was pushing him back. It freaked him out so much he turned around and left.
He described it as feeling like he was standing near a giant speaker.
Yes, exactly. And he mentioned feeling this overwhelming sense of dread, like something bad was going to happen if he went any further. He shared this experience in the comment section of one of his YouTube videos, and the online community, unsurprisingly, went wild.
So this wasn't just some random creepy feeling, there was a physical sensation involved. And of course, everyone online wanted him to go back and investigate further.
Right. The thing is, the Mojave Desert, where this alleged M cave was located, isn't exactly a walk in the park. It's a place of extremes, scorching temperatures, treacherous terrain, limited water sources. Even experienced hikers can get into serious trouble out there.
And Kenny, with his minimalist approach to hiking, no maps, no GPS, just him and the desert, was pushing the limits of safety, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And remember, this was before satellite phones and GPS trackers were as common as they are now. So if something went wrong, he was essentially on his own.
So we've got this guy, Kenny Veach, who's known for his daring solo hikes, finds this potentially dangerous and mysterious cave, and then vanishes. What happened next? Did he give in to the online pressure and go back?
He did. In fact, he uploaded a video titled M Cave Hike, documenting his attempt to find the cave again. What's striking about this video is that he's surprisingly lighthearted, even joking about the whole thing. It's almost as if he's trying to downplay the fear he felt before.
But that comment, that warning, it must have been in the back of his mind, right? Did he find the cave on that second attempt?
No, he didn't. And that's what makes the next part of the story even more baffling. In November of 2014, Kenny told his girlfriend he was going on an overnight hike near the same area where he claimed to have found the M cave. He left, and that was the last anyone saw of him.
Hold on. So despite the creepy vibes, the ominous warning, and not even being able to find the cave again, he decides to go back to that same area, alone. What was he thinking?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Did he find the cave that final time? Did something happen to him out in the desert? Or was there something more to his disappearance than meets the eye?
Okay, before we go down that rabbit hole, let's talk about the search for Kenny. What did the authorities find?
Search and rescue teams combed the area for weeks, but their efforts turned up very little. They did find Kenny's cell phone near an abandoned mine shaft that was featured in his M Cave hike video. But that was it. No backpack, no camping gear, no sign of a struggle.
So we're left with more questions than answers. What are the prevailing theories about what might have happened to Kenny?
Well, there are a few main schools of thought. Some believe he simply succumbed to the dangers of the desert. Remember, he was hiking alone with minimal supplies in a harsh and unforgiving environment. A fall, heat stroke, dehydration, a venomous snake bite, any of these could have been fatal.
That's definitely a possibility given his hiking style. But something about this case feels different, like there's more to it than just a tragic accident. What are some of the other theories?
Some people believe foul play might be involved. Kenny's disappearance happened relatively close to Area 51, which has always been shrouded in secrecy and conspiracy theories. Some speculate he might have stumbled upon something he shouldn't have, illegal activities, government secrets, who knows.
Intriguing. So we've got the lost in the desert theory and the something nefarious is going on theory. But there's one more we haven't touched on yet, and it's arguably the most captivating one, the M cave itself. What if something truly strange was going on with that cave?
That's where things get really interesting. Some speculate that the M cave could be linked to secret government experiments, maybe involving sonic weapons or some kind of technology that could explain the vibrations Kenny described feeling. Others go even further, suggesting paranormal phenomena or even extraterrestrial involvement.
Wow. Okay, so we've got everything from the mundane to the outlandish on the table. But before we dive into each of these theories, let's hear from the people who knew Kenny best. What did his loved ones have to say about his disappearance?
Well, that's where the perspectives start to diverge. Kenny's girlfriend at the time, Sharon Pilgrim, believes he died by suicide. She cited his struggles with depression and the fact that he intentionally left his camera and GPS behind, which was unusual for him.
That's heartbreaking, but it makes you wonder why go to all the trouble of going back to this specific area if he was planning to end his life.
Exactly. And that's where the other side of the story comes in. Kenny's sister-in-law, Susan Veach, believes he might have faked his death for attention. She points to the lack of any concrete evidence of the M cave, suggesting that he might have fabricated the whole story. She also mentioned a possible sighting of Kenny years later, which, if true, would completely upend everything we think we know.
Okay, so I've got conflicting views from people who are close to him. We've got the mysterious M cave with its strange vibes. We've got the harsh realities of the Mojave Desert. And we've got a whole spectrum of theories from the plausible to the downright bizarre. Where do we even begin to unravel this?
That's the challenge, isn't it? We have pieces of a puzzle, but some of them might be missing and others might not even belong. We need to take a closer look at each theory, examine the evidence, and see if we can make sense of it all.
All right, so let's do this. We're going to dissect each theory, weigh the evidence, and try to understand what might have happened to Kenny Veach.
Let's start with the theory that seems the most straightforward, yet might be the most deceptive. Did Kenny Veach simply become another victim of the unforgiving Mojave Desert?
This is where things get really interesting.
The Mojave Desert is a beautiful but brutal place. Temperatures can swing wildly, water sources are scarce, and the terrain can be treacherous. For someone hiking alone without proper supplies or navigation, the margin for error is razor thin.
It's almost like the desert itself is a character in this mystery, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And it's a character with a long history of claiming lives. Dehydration, heat stroke, falls, encounters with venomous creatures. These are all very real dangers that hikers face in the Mojave.
One article I read mentioned that search and rescue teams in the Mojave often find the remains of hikers who were simply unprepared for the harsh conditions. They wander off the trail, get lost, and succumb to the elements.
Exactly. And in Kenny's case, his minimalist approach to hiking, while admirable in some ways, could have easily backfired in such a demanding environment. No map, no GPS, no emergency beacon. He was relying solely on his own knowledge and experience.
Which, to be fair, seemed pretty extensive. He knew the desert.
True. But even experienced hikers can make mistakes, especially when fatigue, heat, and dehydration set in judgment can become impaired. And what might seem like a minor misstep can have catastrophic consequences.
So if we're looking at the lost in the desert theory, what specific evidence supports it?
Well, aside from the inherent dangers of the environment itself, there's the fact that Kenny's car was found several miles away from the mine shaft where his phone was discovered. This suggests he was hiking for some distance before something happened.
That's right. And they never found his backpack or any of his camping gear. If he'd planned on being out overnight, as he told his girlfriend, wouldn't he have had those things with him?
You would think so, which leads some to believe that maybe he got disoriented, wandered off course, and perhaps left his gear behind in an attempt to lighten his load or find his way back.
The desert can play tricks on your mind, especially under extreme conditions. There are documented cases of hikers experiencing hallucinations and making irrational decisions due to dehydration and heat exhaustion.
Absolutely. And without a map or compass, it's easy to lose your bearings, especially in the vast and often featureless landscape of the Mojave. He could have wandered in circles for days, becoming increasingly disoriented and weak.
It's a chilling thought to be lost and alone in that vastness with the sun beating down and no way to call for help.
It's a stark reminder of the power of nature and the importance of respecting its limits. But as compelling as the lost in the desert theory is, there are some aspects of Kenny's disappearance that don't quite fit.
Like what?
Well, for one, Kenny was known for his meticulous planning. He knew those trails, he knew the risks. It seems unlikely that he would have just wandered off aimlessly, especially in an area he was familiar with.
And let's not forget that cryptic comment warning him not to go back to the M cave. It adds an unsettling layer to this whole lost in the desert scenario.
Exactly. If we entertain the possibility that the comment was a genuine warning, it suggests that there might be something more to Kenny's disappearance than simply getting lost.
Okay, so let's shift gears and explore that. What about the theory of foul play? Is there any evidence to suggest that Kenny might have met with foul play?
It's certainly a possibility we can't dismiss, especially given the proximity to Area 51 and the general sense of secrecy that surrounds that region.
Right, the Area 51 connection is like catnip for conspiracy theorists.
There have always been rumors of clandestine government operations, secret testing, and even cover-ups in that area. Some people believe Kenny might have accidentally stumbled upon something he wasn't supposed to see.
Like a secret military base?
Yeah.
An alien landing site?
Well, those are the more outlandish speculations. More realistically, he could have encountered illegal activities, drug trafficking, smuggling, or even something as mundane as people trespassing on government property.
And someone decided to silence him.
It's possible. Or maybe he witnessed something that put him in danger and he tried to run. Remember, the Mojave is vast and sparsely populated. It would be relatively easy to make someone disappear out there.
Yeah, it's a disturbing thought. But is there any actual evidence to support this theory, or is it pure speculation?
Concrete evidence is hard to come by in a case like this. But some people point to the fact that Kenny's phone was found near an abandoned mine shaft. Could that have been a staging ground for something illicit?
Ooh, that's interesting. And didn't some of the articles mention that there had been reports of suspicious activity in that area before Kenny disappeared?
Yes, there were rumors of people seeing strange lights and hearing unusual sounds in the months leading up to Kenny's disappearance. Of course, these could just be local legends or misinterpretations, but they add to the overall sense of mystery.
It's like we're peeling back layers of an onion, and with each layer, the story gets more complex and intriguing.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the elephant in the room, the theory that looms over everything else, the M cave itself.
The M cave. Okay, let's talk about that. What if Kenny really did find something unusual, something that went beyond the realm of the ordinary?
This is where we move from the potentially plausible to the truly speculative.
Bring it on. Let's hear the wildest theories.
Well, some people believe that the M cave could be a gateway to another dimension, a portal to a parallel universe. They point to the strange vibrations Kenny described feeling, suggesting that they could be some kind of interdimensional energy.
Okay, that's pretty far out there. But I have to admit, the idea of a secret portal hidden in the desert is pretty cool.
Others believe that the cave could be a site of ancient alien activity, perhaps a landing site or a hidden base. They point to the proximity of Area 51 and the long history of UFO sightings in that region.
And Kenny stumbled upon their top secret lair. I can see how that would make for a good sci-fi movie.
Right. And then there are those who believe that the cave could be linked to some kind of government experiment, perhaps involving sonic weapons or other advanced technology.
Wait, so the vibrations Kenny felt could have been real, caused by some kind of experimental device?
It's a possibility, though. There's no evidence to support it. But remember, we're deep in speculation territory now.
True. But even if the more outlandish theories aren't true, there's still the question of whether the M cave itself was real. Did it exist at all, or was it a figment of Kenny's imagination?
That's a key question, and it's one that Kenny's loved ones have differing opinions on. His girlfriend, Sherry-Ann, believes he did find the caves and that something happened to him there. But his sister-in-law, Susan, thinks he might have fabricated the whole story for attention.
Okay, so we have a lot to unpack here. We've got a missing hiker, a mysterious cave, conflicting accounts from loved ones, and a whole spectrum of theories ranging from the mundane to the fantastical. How do we even begin to make sense of it all?
Well, maybe instead of trying to solve the mystery outright, we shift our focus to understanding Kenny himself. Who was he, what drove him, and what might have led him to that fateful last hike?
That's a great idea. Let's put the theories aside for a moment and delve into the man behind the mystery.
One of the things that stood out to me in the research was that Kenny was a bit of an eccentric character. He was a self-proclaimed inventor, he was fascinated by the paranormal, and he had this deep-seated desire to explore the unknown.
Wait, you mentioned something about him being an inventor. What did he invent?
Well, one of the sources mentioned that he created an improved toilet paper holder and even submitted it to Shark Tank.
A toilet paper holder, seriously.
Okay. Yeah, it seems a bit out there. But it speaks to his creative spirit and his willingness to think outside the box. He wasn't afraid to pursue his passions, no matter how unconventional they might have seemed.
I can see that.
Yeah.
He was clearly someone who was drawn to the unusual, the unexplained, the things that most people shy away from.
Absolutely. And that makes me wonder if his fascination with the M cave wasn't just about the danger or the mystery, but also about the possibility of discovery. He was searching for something something more than just a physical location.
Maybe he was searching for answers for meaning, for something that transcended the ordinary?
Perhaps. Or maybe he was just looking for a good story.
Either way, he found one, didn't he?
Yeah.
A story that continues to captivate and intrigue us years later.
Exactly. But let's not forget that this story has a human cost. Kenny Veach was a real person with a family and friends who loved him. His disappearance left a void in their lives, a void that might never be filled.
That's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the theories and the speculation, but we can't lose sight of the fact that this is a tragedy, a story of loss and unanswered questions.
And while we may never know for certain what happened to Kenny Veach, perhaps the most important thing we can do is honor his memory by continuing to explore, to question, and to seek understanding.
Beautifully said. Now, we've covered a lot of ground so far, but there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to examine before we can even begin to draw any conclusions, the conflicting accounts from Kenny's loved ones.
Right. His girlfriend believes he met with some kind of tragic end, either by accident or perhaps by his own hand. But his sister-in-law believes he might still be out there, that he chose to disappear.
Two very different perspectives. Let's dig into those, shall we? It's fascinating how two people who knew Kenny so well could have such contrasting views on what happened to him. Let's start with Sherry-Ann Pilgrim, Kenny's girlfriend at the time. What led her to believe that Kenny might have taken his own life?
Well, according to some of the articles we have, Sherry-Ann mentioned that Kenny had been battling depression in the months leading up to his disappearance. She said he was struggling to find his purpose. He was feeling lost and overwhelmed.
That's incredibly sad. And she believes that this, coupled with his decision to leave his camera and GPS behind, points towards suicide.
That seems to be her conclusion. She felt that leaving behind those essential items, things he always took with him on his hikes, was a deliberate choice, a sign that he didn't intend to come back.
That's a powerful argument. But wouldn't a person struggling with those feelings be less likely to venture out into the unforgiving desert alone?
It's certainly a valid question, and that's where the complexity of human behavior comes into play. Sometimes seeking solitude in nature can feel like a way to cope with inner turmoil. Or perhaps for Kenny, the allure of the desert, the vastness, the sense of being completely alone was somehow appealing in that state of mind.
It's almost like he was drawn to the very thing that could potentially consume him. A sort of tragic irony.
Perhaps. But we have to be careful not to project our own interpretations onto Kenny's actions.
Okay.
We can't truly know what was going through his mind.
Of course. But understanding those possibilities is important. It helps us to see the situation from multiple angles.
Absolutely. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, we have Kenny's sister-in-law, Susan Veach, who believes he might have staged his disappearance.
Okay, let's talk about that. What's her reasoning?
Well, Susan has been very vocal about her belief that Kenny was obsessed with fame and attention. She thinks he might have fabricated the entire M-Cave story to gain notoriety, to boost his YouTube channel, to become some kind of desert legend.
So she's suggesting that he deliberately created this mystery, this persona, to draw people in.
That's her theory. She believes that Kenny, being the resourceful and tech-savvy guy he was, could have easily faked his disappearance, made it look like an accident, or even planned to reappear at some point down the line.
And the alleged sighting of Kenny years later, what was that about?
Susan claimed to have recognized Kenny in a security video from a store robbery in Las Vegas. The footage was grainy and inconclusive, but she was adamant that it was him. The police never confirmed or denied her claim, but it's a detail that adds another layer of intrigue to the story.
It definitely throws a wrench into things. If that sighting was legitimate, it would mean that he's been out there all this time living under the radar, which is pretty wild to think about.
It would completely change our understanding of this case, but it also raises more questions than it answers. Why stage your own disappearance only to resurface years later involved in a petty crime? It doesn't quite add up.
Unless he needed money, and that was the only way he could get it without revealing his identity. Maybe he'd been living off the grid for so long he had no other options.
That's a possibility. Or maybe it wasn't him at all. Maybe Susan was mistaken, or maybe it was just someone who resembled Kenny. Facial recognition isn't always reliable, especially with low-quality footage.
Right. We can't discount the possibility of a coincidence or a case of mistaken identity. But it's hard to ignore the fact that Susan brought it up at all. It suggests that she's open to the possibility that Kenny is still alive, that he chose to disappear for reasons we may never fully understand.
And that brings us back to the heart of this mystery. We have these conflicting accounts from people who knew Kenny, these different interpretations of his motivations and his actions. But ultimately, the only person who truly knows what happened is Kenny himself.
And he's not here to tell us. So we're left with pieces of a puzzle, some of them fitting together neatly, others not so much.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this case so captivating. It's not about finding a definitive answer. It's about exploring the possibilities, the different perspectives, the unanswered questions.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most compelling stories are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.
I think that's a good place to wrap up this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground: the chilling warning about the M cave, the dangers of the Mojave Desert, the theories ranging from plausible to outlandish, and the conflicting perspectives from Kenny's loved ones. But perhaps the most important takeaway is that sometimes the search for truth is more about the journey than the destination.
Beautifully said. So what are your final thoughts on this case?
I'm struck by the enduring power of mystery. Years later, Kenny Veach's story continues to fascinate and intrigue us. It's a testament to the enduring allure of the unknown, the human desire to understand the inexplicable, and the power of a well-told story.
It's a story that invites us to question our assumptions, to consider different perspectives, and to embrace the possibility that there are things in this world that we may never fully comprehend.
And perhaps in the end, that's enough.
Well said. And for those of you listening, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going. Until next time, fellow deep divers, stay curious and stay safe.